Hello, so today we'll be going over patch 15.3, the upcoming patch for TFT that should be out tomorrow. If you like my content, please make sure to like and subscribe. So I have my main channel, which you're looking at right now, where I do daily TFT guides, either how to play guides about different set mechanics or parts of the set, or doing stuff like this where I'm going over patch notes for you guys. If you like that content, make sure to like and subscribe. And then also there's my gaming VOD channel. If we can get this to 1,000 subscribers, I will do another giveaway, another RP giveaway. So stay tuned, make sure to check this out if you want to see some gameplay of some of the exciting games I've been playing. Not really, but you know what I mean. Anyways, so just some general notes. These are official patch notes from the website. I just kind of interpreted them and put them on this slide, and I'm going to go through them and give my opinions and takes on it. As per usual, if you're new to the channel, I will do a top comms or my recommendations for climbing tomorrow when the actual patch is out. I can play a couple games, give you guys a little bit of a meta read or how I see it if you want to have that type of knowledge as well. As the overview, this is taken from the Riot Games website, so if you just want like a little snapshot, basically there's a lot of things that were weaker that were buffed, some of the augments, some of the things that are a little bit more overbearing got nerfed, which we'll talk about, and then some adjustments to some units that were a little bit more bugged. Anyways, let's talk about system changes. Off rip, power-ups. There was an issue with some power-ups not appearing. There's basically like a weight system of how common certain power-ups are for different units. But basically there was an issue with some of the power-ups with weights of 0 at certain points in the game. So max speed and mana rush weren't appearing, so they just adjusted those weights. Nothing super technical, just know like if you wanted like to see some of these that you knew about, like max speed where you're slowly ramping up and gaining attack speed every takedown, or mana rush. This was one that I really liked. It's really good on Jarvan where you start combat with full mana. They just weren't appearing properly. That's why maybe if you were playing Jarvan, you didn't see mana rush on it. Just some adjustments there, so that's now behaving properly. Additionally, some other system changes. Prismatic orbs now. One of the prismatic orb drops basically just gave you a bunch of gold. It was like 55 gold. It felt a little bit bad. I personally didn't like it that much because even though it's a huge amount of gold, other people would get like a radiant item, other people would get like Ornn artifacts, and you just get a bunch of gold. It's like, it felt like, you know, kind of like, I wish I got something that made me strong right now. They're changing that to be 10 gold and a radiant lucky item. So basically like you get like one of those like lucky chests, I believe, that's radiant now, and then you use it on a unit and it will give you a recommended or one of the recommended items, but radiant version. I think that's how it's going to work, but ideally it's just radiant item and 10 gold, similar to some of the other cash outs. 4 stars, sorry, it says stars, it should say stars. 4 stars, flat HP bonus. It's going from 200 to 0, so basically it's like a flat extra HP bonus, and then that would scale up with the star level, so they'd be like really strong, really tanky. This is kind of decreasing the power of some of the 4 stars, because that's like something that's a little bit more common with things like protagonist, worth the wait, becoming a little bit more relevant. Armor timery. So this one's one that I really like as a change. So there's a safety timer that when you would use a fruit, Crystal Gambit if you're choosing to push or not, and Lee Sin if you're choosing like Juggernaut or Duelist, like picking him. There's like that little thing at the bottom of the screen that you get to click with your mouse, and it felt very laggy, like there was like a large timer on it. That's for like, you know, to help with accidental misclicks, right? Some of the armories, they sometimes pop up and they jump scare you. You don't want to accidentally be clicking somewhere and then just like pop the armory and just do something dumb. That was like a safety timer. It felt really long, especially with fruits. There was a lot of times where it's like I pop it last second, I'm trying to get the fruit on, and then I can't get my shadow clone out or stuff like that. They're decreasing the timer so that you can click a little bit faster. I think it's a good change. Just be aware of it if you're somebody who's just like clicking around and maybe had that safety help you out in some cases. Next we go to traits. So traits, 7 Crystal Gambit, Crystal Gambit, 3 Crystal Gambit. They're increasing the gems per loss to make it a little bit more consistent when you're playing just 3 Crystal Gambit to get maybe some better cash outs. That 7 Crystal Gambit, however, this is like the Giga one where you need an emblem and a 5 cost. They're decreasing the amount of damage amp that they give to all the units from 30 to 20%. I think that's fine. I think Crystal Gambit's in a weird spot because a lot of the comps are very scammy, so it's really hard to play around Crystal Gambit. Like there's a lot of games where I'll play Crystal Gambit, then all of a sudden I lose to a Kate player, then I'll lose to an Ashe player or something, or I'll lose to like somebody else who has backline access, and then it's just like, ugh, you know, it's a little bit awkward. So, you know, maybe this will make Crystal Gambit a little bit more popular, but of course, it was still a win condition comp, and you can still outcap everybody if you get in Crystal Gambit early enough. Just be aware that's a little bit buffed. You're going to get a little bit better cash out. However, later on in the game, you can't rely too much on that damage amp anymore. It's still going to be good, but it just won't be as strong. Mighty Mech is getting a little bit of a nerf / buff. So, Mighty Mech, the HP scaling for 3 Mighty Mech is getting dropped. So this is going to hurt comps like Sork, comps that just tech in 3 Mighty Mech. Basically, the mech would get stronger with every stage, as well as like the scaling that you get on star levels and stuff. For specifically 3 Mighty Mech, the scaling, the HP stage scaling is getting decreased. So it's just going to be a little bit less tanky. You can see it's around like a 10-ish% across the board, maybe a little bit more. So it's going to die like 10% faster. You can kind of think of it like that. Mighty Mech 3, however, is also going to get increased healing. So this is going to work out really nicely if you're playing around 3 Mighty Mech with like actual Mighty Mechs as carries in those comps. One that this might benefit a little bit is something like Senna, where Senna, a lot of times your stabilizer is around 3, maybe you're rerolling Senna, something like that. It just makes it so that there's a little bit more healing. It might work out to be around the same, by the way, because like obviously if you're playing around like a Karma or that type of board that uses these type of things, it might work out to be like okay. So we'll just have to wait and see to see if the Mighty Mech is tanky enough to survive in some of these cases. Next, Luchador. So Luchador, the healing from Luchador is getting dropped for 3 Luchador and 4 Luchador from 20 to 15 and 50% to 35. I already think that Luchador is a little bit struggling because Volibear is kind of in a weird spot right now. We'll see how things shake up with some of the buffs and nerfs to some of the other units in the game. But I wasn't sitting here thinking like Luchador was going to get altered in any way because it's also dependent on a 5 cost. But it is what it is. The second thing, Luchador no longer cleanses damage over time effects. Now this, I put it as a nerf, but it could also technically be a buff in some cases. Basically what would happen is, let's say you have a dot damage effect, like Karma spinning, like the Karma disc. If Karma disc was on a Luchador unit, and then their Luchador procced, they would cleanse the disc off. In some cases, like with some attacks, it would actually transfer the aggro onto like a different unit. So sometimes the cleanse would go off and then the disc would fly and hit like a backline unit and then it would kill them. So sometimes that was a little bit of a grief, but typically it was really good because your tank just got a second lease at life. So a lot of times, unless it was like really late in a fight, you would just cleanse it off. Your tank would live, be able to heal, and then it would just go kill some shitter unit. Like the disc would just go somewhere and kill somebody else. And that applied with all damage over time effects. Now it no longer cleanses, so when they proc the Luchador, I'm assuming they're still going to have the damage over time effects applied to them. Now I put it as a nerf because to me it looks like a nerf. It could also be a buff in some cases because like I said, sometimes the dot damage then gets applied to a unit you didn't want the damage to be applied to. So it's up to you to see, up to you to figure it out. I think it's a net nerf, but it could be different, right? It's up in the air a little bit, but just mentioning it, just trying to explain it to you guys. Monster Trainer. They're now making the XP stage bonus increased so that if you have a monster in a little bit later, you can still achieve like that level 30. In their descriptions on the patch notes, they also mentioned like, you know, if you have Monster Trainer starting on 3-1, so instead of starting on stage 2, you should ideally be able to get to your level 30 1 to 2 rounds earlier, which is massive. That's a big change because usually it's like end of stage 4, early stage 5. It might be a little bit more consistent in getting it end of stage 4. I think this is a really big change. It's pretty important, namely on Rammus. If you guys have ever played Rammus, that dude takes forever to gain the XP because, like, you know, if you're playing Kog'Maw or Smolder, they're your main carry, so they're participating in most of the takedowns and they get the bonus XP for the takedowns. But Rammus, a lot of times, I feel like he doesn't gain as the XP as fast because I'll have a Rammus in the same time that I would normally have a Smolder, and he's always like 2 or 3 levels behind. So this one might make it very nice for Rammus especially. And then obviously the other monster trainers, it makes it so maybe you can play it a little bit later in the game, but also if you start with it really early, it will make your spot a lot better because you can maybe squeak out a couple extra levels, hit level 30 a little bit faster. Star Guardian, they're changing the Ahri bonus. Ahri's bonus was pretty shit. It was 3 mana over 2 seconds. It's almost doubled now to 5 mana over 2 seconds. That's going to help a lot of the units do damage. That's a pretty significant power buff to Star Guardian because that's applying to all the Star Guardian units, which is pretty nice. Wraith proc damage, so this is Wraith when they do their damage and it has the big thing. It's getting buffed across the board, a little bit like a 10%-ish, you know, across the board. Pretty nice. Next, we're going to go on to the changes to the units. So we're starting with 1 cost. Nefiri. Nefiri's shielding, so I believe this would scale off AP typically, but shielding is now getting reduced a little bit, around a 10%-ish nerf. Sorry, I put 3-star Nefiri as also red. 3-star Nefiri is not changing, so if you high roll, if you take a Build-A-Bud Nefiri 3 or anything like that, Nefiri 3 is still going to be as strong. It's just the 1 and 2 star Nefiris that are getting nerfed a little bit. Nefiri is one of the best frontline units. Early game, really strong. Could often be really hard to kill. And it works really nicely with the Juggernaut synergy with some of the Juggernaut openers. So it makes a little bit of sense. Syndra's getting nerfed across the board. 1, 2, and 3-star Syndra. Basically getting like a pretty significant chunk of change off, especially on the 3-star and the 2-star. You know, it's not like she's going to be completely irrelevant, but she has been extremely strong. I think she will still be really strong because her bonus fruit that's particular to her, Rising Chaos, really unlocks a lot of potential for you to play around the Syndra unit early, even into mid, even into late. So I still think she'll be fine, just bringing down that power level a little bit, which I think is warranted because she's one of the more broken of the 1 costs. Also, for 1 cost, me personally, I would have also liked to see something about Gnar. I think Gnar is extremely strong, but no Gnar changes here, which I think he kind of skated by a little bit, because usually the big 2 that I think of when I'm thinking about openers are usually Syndra, Gnar, if I'm thinking about like the 1 cost that I want to play around. So, you know, it's okay. We'll see how it goes. There was a big Luchador change, so maybe Gnar is fine because of that, by the way, just to mention it. Next, we have our 2 cost changes. So, Mundo, nerf. HP gain, so this is basically Mundo. He'll scale as the fight goes on, and then he has like an HP gain that scales off of AP. His HP gain is now getting reduced. It's pretty substantial, especially on the 1 and 2 star. You're basically losing like 60, which is like, you know, closer to like that 15-20% nerf. It's not as much as like a 10% nerf anymore. But across the board, especially on the 3-star, like it's pretty substantial HP nerfs. So this Mundo is going to be a lot easier to kill. I think there are some Exodia situations with Mundo, especially if you give him like heavyweight and stuff like that, because then you get a lot of value off of it. This might be to address some of those situations, because normal Mundo, he was tanky, but he didn't seem like this big of a nerf tanky. But then there are some like win conditions, especially with artifacts. So I think it's just to handle all of that as well. But just be aware, if you're playing Mundo as your primary frontline unit, he's going to be a little bit less reliable as a main tank. Next, we have Gangplank. So Gangplank, his ability damage is getting buffed across the board, 1, 2, and 3 stars. It's actually pretty substantial, but I don't think he's going to be that crazy. He's kind of been like in a weird space since he was really broken, and then he was overtuned, and then they nerfed him, and then they double nerfed him, and now he's kind of like almost like really shitty to play. So they're just trying to make him a little bit better, so that makes sense. But they're decreasing the gold chance from 40 to 30%, so he's not just printing you gold, which I think is a good change as well. Next, we have Jin. So now Jin, on his 4th shot, so whenever he would do, like, basically that, like, the empowered 4th shot, that was really, like, giga hit, now it will redirect if the target dies while mid-flight, because it takes a while for the shot to come out, it takes a while for the shot to travel. This actually, to me, is a massive buff. A lot of times when a unit can miss or whiff on a shot, if you now make it so that the shot cannot miss, which is what this means, it will redirect mid-flight, that is actually pretty big. It's pretty massive of a change. I'm not sure how massive it is, because obviously Jin is tied to some other things to make him work, because he has a little particular of a kit, right? He doesn't gain attack speed. You have to like transfer attack speed to AD, stuff like that. But just know he's going to be much more reliable in actually doing damage now. Just keep in mind, these are usually pretty nice changes. It's not like a small thing. It's usually a pretty good thing. Next we have our other 2 costs. So we have Kabuko. So Kabuko is getting nerfed across the board, but mostly in his mentor form. So mentor form shielding is going to get down on the 2-star and 3-star versions. Mentor slam HP ratio is getting dropped a little bit, and mentor secondary HP shield is also getting dropped a little bit. He's kind of a demon when you put him into the 4 mentor kind of reroll lines. There is a reroll line that's going to be really popular, I believe, which is mentor with Senna, and I think even in some of the games it's pretty common. We'll talk about it later when we get to Senna, but just keep that in mind. So now the Kabuko is going to be a little bit less reliable as like that giga monster that's just like stunning and tanking everything, but not too much of a change. Mostly like, you know, around 10%, maybe like 20%, like here and there. Next we have Xayah. So Xayah getting buffed across the board with the ability damage. So that's pretty good. could make Star Guardian lines well. There also might be some Xayah reroll lines because there's a lot of buffs to some of the particular stranger comps that you might play around with Xayah, which we can talk about when we get to those changes as well. Next, we have 3 cost changes. So one of the big ones, I think everybody kind of wanted to see this, some Caitlyn nerfs. Caitlyn has been pretty oppressive and really strong currently in the landscape of the game. Her primary shot damage is getting nerfed. It's around like 10%-ish across the board. And then you have the bouncing bullets, which after she would fire a shot, you have the bouncing bullet that goes around and does some extra season 2 kind of like the damage basically. That's getting nerfed across the board as well. Now, the thing with Caitlyn is that she is a sniper and she hits backline. I still think that she will be a threat. These changes are substantial and it probably hurts her ability to stabilize, especially on 2-star versions. But I think if you have a good spot for like the Academy reroll, I don't think it's going to be dead in the water. Maybe that's just a me thing. I'm a bit skeptical because obviously if you still position in a way that the Caitlyn is able to snipe the backline, even if you get this reduction in damage, a lot of times she was overkilling and like everybody was like clearly dead anyways, especially on 3-star Caitlyn. However, the consistency is key because she's not consistent in getting to that point, like, you know, on 1-star, 2-star points, right? That's how rerolls kind of work. If you're not winning some fights when you're 1-star, 2-star, and this damage actually lets the opponent's backline carry live a little bit longer, I could see this comp being a little bit harder to play. So just be aware of it, right? Don't just like hard force it. We might have to try it out a little bit on the new patch day. Next, we have a lot of Senna buffs. So Senna, her ability damage, AD, and AP ratios are both getting buffed. Senna is a little bit of a niche line that's coming up towards the end of this patch right now, where you actually play Senna with 4 Mentor and all the other like Mighty Mechs, right? It's very similar to when you would play Gangplank, right? 4 Mentor Gangplank, you reroll all the Mentors on 7. That's becoming a common Senna line where you play Senna, Ryze, dual carry. With the Senna buffs, as well as like, you know, some of the other changes that are happening, I believe this is going to be one of the go-to reroll options starting the next patch. Of course, this is just me from looking at numbers of the patch notes. I also watched some scrims. There's some scrims of people playing on the patch early just because like to prep for the tournament on Friday. So I watched some of the scrims and it also does really well in the scrims. It's a very common reroll line there. So I think come tomorrow, Senna reroll might be something to look out for. It was kind of a little bit more memey on the current patch, and in some spots you would win out with it. With the buffs, it's definitely going to be a little bit upper echelon there. Next we have Smolder. So Smolder's getting his damage reduced. Smolder has been one of the better of the what's it called? The monster trainer units. The damage nerfs I don't think are that warrant. Like, let me put it this way. I don't think Smolder needs a nerf because Smolder is already like okay, and I don't think it's like a win out comp unless you have specific conditions for it. However, Smolder is very strong with artifacts, which makes him broken, and they're also buffing the monster trainer XP. So I don't think these nerfs are going to make Smolder quote-unquote unplayable or bad. It's just going to mean that you need to have a little bit of a better spot for him. And it might also mean that you're fine anyways because of the extra XP that you gain. Maybe you'll scale up the Smolder in a better way and it'll just be a little bit less consistent lower level. And then you'll ramp up and do equally as much damage or more damage if you get more levels towards late game. Hard for me to say, but I would just like be skeptical on first play, right? I would make sure that I have the Smolder early, see how it goes, and then decide from there how strong it is on the new patch. But I think he'll still be okay. I think he'll still be able to play the Smolder reroll lines. Next we have Yasuo. So Yasuo is getting a little bit of a base damage buff, but then some of his extra damage, like the AP ratio is getting dropped and the Mentor slash is getting dropped. I think this is just to deal with like the Mentor line. I think the Mentor line itself is something that's like sometimes really strong with certain combinations, sometimes really weak depending on who your extra carry is. I think this is just to help deal with that. I don't know. It is what it is. I would, like, you know, I don't think Yasuo is that threatening unless you have, like, the fully upgraded 4 Mentor board. But given that Senna reroll is something that might be more common, it's like, whatever to me. You can nerf him, sure. Next we have some changes to 4 cost. So 4 cost we have Jinx. So Jinx is getting a buff to her damage. That's going to help out Star Guardians a lot. I'm not sure if we're going to see Sniper Jinx come back, like Sniper Bastions, like in PvE. But just something to make note of. Jinx might be a little bit more reliable of a carry. It's a pretty substantial buff on her 2-star variation. We're going from 750 to 875. Imagine that with full Star Guardian bonuses or Sniper bonuses. That's actually a big chunk of change. Pretty massive buff. So Jinx might be a little bit more reliable as a carry, which should make things a little bit healthier, at least on the AD side if you're playing around like IE, those type of things. Karma, however, is getting a pretty substantial nerf in my opinion as well. So 2-star Karma and 1-star Karma is getting a pretty big nerf to damage. Now, I'm not sure why. I think it's maybe to deal with like balancing of everything right now. But it seems to me like a little bit like, to me, Karma was in a fine spot as of the current patch. And there's some units that I think are like really weak. Some units that I think are really strong. We'll see how it plays out. I'm kind of skeptical about playing Sorks on the newest patch. We'll see, like I said, tomorrow if these changes are that impactful, because I already feel like Sorks sometimes, especially if you don't have upgrades and good items, you need that explosive damage. So the nerf to Karma might kind of like make that comp a little bit, you know, temperamental, so to speak. Next we have Rise changes. Now Rise is not too big of a buff, but he is getting a pretty big damage buff, and Mentor damage is also getting buffed. Rise to me is scary because Rise has really good synergies. He's basically a trait bot that can fit onto every board. Buffing his damage, like, you know, in some boards you just don't itemize him, like a Sork board, but especially with like the Senna reroll line that I was talking about before, that's a line where you usually dual carry Rise. This is a pretty substantial buff to lines like that, where you're playing around 4 Mentor, or you're playing 4 Mentor Mighty Mech or Mighty Mech Flex. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't think he's going to be that crazy because, you know, he was a little bit a ways from being like a primary carry after like a lot of the changes that happened in the start of the set. So we'll see how it plays out. Next we have Samira. So these changes I'm not sure about. This is the one that I'm confused a little bit. Basically, Samira was bugged that she wasn't getting proper Omnivamp from her ability, which to me doesn't really matter, but whatever. But they fixed that bug. Now, I don't know what that does to her kit, because like I understand like the Omnivamp is essential and she gets the Omnivamp, she gets the style, then she dives in. I understand all of that, but as compensation they're also nerfing her. She's getting her bullet damage nerfed and her cast damage nerfed as well, and the nerfs to me, especially the cast damage, seems pretty high, like 420 to 345. Like that's a good chunk of change that we're losing there. So I don't know how Samira is going to play out on the new patch, because to me, she wasn't somebody that striked fear in my heart. If I saw somebody playing Samira, I was like, oh shit, that's a unit that's going to absolutely destroy me. I was like kind of on the side of like, you know, you played as Tempo, and she was kind of like on the weaker side of the 4 cost. So I don't know how she's gonna work out with like her, because she got bug fixed, right? The bug fix is massive. It could make her broken, who knows. So we'll see how she works when the set goes live, the patch goes live tomorrow. I'll pay attention to it, and I'll let you guys know if it's like, if she's broken, or if she's like same as usual, or if she's worse. It's hard to say, because obviously big bug fix, it's hard to know how things shape out until after bug fix. Next we have Yumi. So Yumi's getting some of their true damage nerfed. So her scaling and her other stuff isn't changed that much. The true damage is like 2% of her base damage, as now it's getting knocked off there. Her true damage was pretty massive to her kit, so this is a pretty substantial nerf, but I think she'll be fine because she already was really reliable, really safe. And a lot of the other 4 costs, like look, Karma and some of the other ones, they got nerfed quite a bit as well. So like I think she'll still be in like that playable line where you can still play around her and be kind of okay with it. Next we have our 5 costs. So Lee Sin getting a couple buffs. So Executioner form Lee Sin, his damage that he's doing on his primary target, because he also has like an AoE thing, is getting buffed. So just make him a little bit more of an option there if you're playing Executioner Lee. Juggernaut Lee is getting a mana buff. So the mana numerator denominator is getting reduced, which means that it's basically going to take him the same amount of mana to cast the first time, right? He has to generate 30 to get his cast. But the denominator is smaller, so this is a net buff, because that means he's going to get more cast off over time. To me, this seems crazy, because I thought Juggernaut Lee Sin was already in a good spot. But maybe by 5 cost standards, he wasn't like crazy. A lot of times you just played him if you fit him onto your board. But he was a high cap potential option for a lot of those boards in Juggernaut form. And then they're also making Juggernaut form primary damage increased, which is pretty massive. I don't know if that's like 3-star or what, but it's a pretty big primary target increase in damage. So I'm pretty sure Juggernaut Lee Sin, like, he was already okay. I'm pretty sure he's gonna be like broken. Like, he's gonna be very good to play around. Like, Juggernaut Lee Sin is gonna find his way onto your board whether you like it or not. Like, I think he's gonna be good. So just keep that in mind. It's a pretty substantial change. He was already kind of okay from what I personally believe. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see tomorrow. Next we have Seraphine. So her damage is getting buffed. Just trying to make it so she drops the big nuke. This with Star Guardian changes as well, probably going to be a lot more reliable to play around high cap Star Guardian type of boards. Maybe that enters the rotation in the current set. But additionally, like, you know, she can also fit in on those Prodigy boards, do some more damage. Yone now is going to gain more attack speed every time he does his hits. And then also he's going to do more magic damage, so increase that AP ratio. I think Yone's in a bit of a weird spot because edgelords are in a weird spot. But in general, Yone, he's kind of hard to fit in onto a board. If you can fit him onto a board, he's going to be a little bit more reliable, so just keep that in mind. Now we're going to go through Augment, so it's going to be a lot of reading, and I'll try my best to go through them all. I put them on these slides so I can color code them with like the green and the red to tell you what's buffed and what's nerfed and all of that. But we'll just read through them together, and hopefully it's still entertaining. I'll try and add some 2 cents in where I can. Aim for the top. So this is the one where you can see who you're fighting, and you always fight stronger people. Your first win now grants a component. That's a buff, because before I don't think you got one. Then you would get another component every 3 wins. I already think this augment's really good, because you get to see who you're fighting. So I don't know why it's getting buffed, but sure. I'm going to click it even more now. Like, I already think it's good. Dazzling display damage reduction. This is the Sork related augment, where it makes you do damage reduction. If you're a Sork unit, you do Sork damage. It's getting reduced, so now your opponents will do more damage because you're reducing them by less. Deepening Shadows, AP and AD. This is the Wraith specific augment. It's getting buffed, so you're getting more AP and AD per proc, so it's now 6. Diamond Hands, this was the Crystal Gambit augment, where you would just cash out 1 time at like 4-7 or something. It was like bullshit. It was like the worst thing in the world, because you would basically never cash out that late, and it just made no sense. It's just completely removed. Makes sense. Get rid of it. No, you should have never clicked in the first place. It was just not an augment that made sense. Sorry, but it's true. Game plan health is getting decreased from 200 to 150. Give him the chair. This is the Mundo Hero augment. They're increasing the HP auto damage from 6% to 7%. With the Mundo nerfs as well, I still think this augment's going to be shit. Now, obviously, you can get a top 4 with this augment. If you want to see a game of it, there's one on my VOD channel, and it was a really funny game. I'm sure it's like entertaining in some way, shape, or form to most of you. So I recommend it. But I would not click this augment. This doesn't strike like joy in me, right? Like, I see this, I don't think it's broken. I'm still very skeptical. This augment is so hard to get to work, in honest opinion. Next, Howling Gale. They're decreasing the amount of mana that is required to summon the Gale. This augment's really weird. I think it's pretty bad. Unless you're playing something like Prodigies. This is definitely a buff that's warranted. The problem with it is that it always moves in like the same direction, so people can position around it and just not avoid the stun, which is kind of whack. But buff, it needed a buff for sure. Izakai, these are all 3 versions of the Prismatic where you get the Echo. It now no longer gives you the Hand of Justice, so you just don't get the item with it. Big nerf all around, but I still think it'll be good because that unit stuns the whole board. He's kind of obnoxious and annoying. Next, we have some more augments. So Schoolyard Justice. We're going to see a lot of this on, on the hero augments. And it's hard for me to say exactly what it means, but it's basically like they're breaking down. Basically, when you have a hero augment, it changes the unit fundamentally, so their stats get altered as well. So this is adjusting the stat altering portion of the hero augments, and I'm not sure if they're strictly buffs or nerfs, or if they mean the same thing, like how they function. But basically, Schoolyard Justice now, instead of his base AS just being 0.08, now he's going to start with lower base AS and then get a 30% attack speed or something like that. I don't know if these are buffs or nerfs. I'll have to wait and see and try them out, because it's too much numbers for me without practical use case of trying out the game. Starfall Nico is getting more healing off her ult, and then also getting that stat mod change where now it's getting adjusted to like this 2-parter version of AS. I don't think Starfall Nico is that good because it's just hard to get her to cast and generate mana. I would avoid it, so just be careful if you try it out. Sunfire board, this is the one that anti-heals the whole board. It's getting increased duration. Great, lasts longer. Tectonic Titan, this is the Malphite hero augment, same thing. We're getting some stat mod changes. Just based on like relatively, this one looks like more of a nerf than a buff, because you're getting like a pretty big decrease in the AS from 0.8 to 0.55. So I think it's more so like, you know, it's hard to say though. Like I said, I don't know the exact breakdown of how it's going to math out. Next we have Tiny Team bonus. So this is the Star Guardian related If you play only 3 Star Guardians, you get their bonuses increased. So now it's going from 175 to 200%. This one I've heard is very strong with Xayah reroll, because with Xayah reroll, you're typically playing very few Star Guardians. You're either playing full Bastion, or if you're playing fan service, you're playing her with Rakan and Protectors. But in general, you're playing significantly less Star Guardians. So this will give you much more of a bonus, which will make the Xayah hit like a truck. So I would keep my eye out. If you have tiny team, maybe it's time for Xayah reroll if you have a spot for it. Tournament favorites, this is the one where you get rewards for playing Soul Fighter units. So now the Soul Fighter breakpoints from 4 to 7 are getting increased. This is a pretty substantial nerf, because this augment I felt was pretty good, because it would guarantee you copies of Samira and Gwen, and also give you a bunch of gold. Now it's going to be harder to hit those Gwens via the augment, which makes the whole comp and the whole augment kind of fall apart a little bit if you're taking it to play around Soul Fighters. So only take it from a good spot where you're making sure that you're getting those wins to ramp up the tournament favorite stacks, because it's based on like damage done or whatever. Next, we have our changes to our items. Item changes. Blue buff. The base mana regen for blue buff is going from 5 to 6. Blue buff kind of has been in a weird spot, because Shojin typically is just a better item because of the generation of mana between the auto attacks and also having some mana regen. Blue buff, you usually never make it, and it's also a little bit awkward because you're using 2 tiers, and those tiers can often make better items like if you split them. So I don't know if this is going to make blue buff really common from 5 to 6. It's going to be like a play by feel kind of thing and see how it works on certain units, because 1 mana regen is pretty substantial. Next we have Guinsoo's Rage Blade, making it less ramping AS. So something that we didn't see any changes to Ashe on the forecast, and I feel like Ashe is very dominant right now. She scales extremely well with Guinsoo. I think she usually wants to have 2 Guinsoo in some cases. So this nerf to Guinsoo, I've heard, at least in scrims, that Ashe is a lot less consistent, so it's not as hard forceable as it is on the current patch. So this can help with that, so just be aware. Guinsoo holders, they're going to have less stacking attack speed. Now, obviously, if you're playing a Guinsoo holder and you're going infinite, you will be able to get that attack speed eventually, so it's not that big of a deal, but just keep it in mind. Next, we have Spirit of Shojin. So Spirit of Shojin base AD is getting dropped a little bit. I think that's fine. You usually don't take it for the base AD. You're usually taking it for its bonus effects, and a lot of times on other units besides AD units. Now we have our Radiant items. Radiant Adaptive Helm. Now, I heard Radiant Adaptive was bugged. We're going to look at the bugs after to see if it's like fixed or not. But basically, the AP and AD is getting buffed, and the resists are getting buffed. This has been typically a pretty bad Radiant item, but it's also bugged a little bit. I think like you don't get all the bonuses, or you don't get both bonuses on the current live, or maybe they fixed it by now. I don't know. I just never click it because it's usually considered to be one of the worst Radiant items, so it definitely needs a buff. Hopefully it's like a better item now. Radiant Blue buff, this one has been extremely broken, but a lot of it is tied to the 10 mana regen that it gives. It's absolutely absurd, so a lot of units love Radiant Blue buff. It's getting nerfed, but it's getting nerfed only on the AD and AP, so instead of getting 60 and 60, it's going to get 45 and 45. I'm not sure how much of an impact that will make, because usually with Radiant Blue, you're taking it for that 10 mana regen because it's so juicy and it like helps your units cast infinite. Next, we have some other changes. So Radiant Edge of Night now heals the holder to full health after untargetability ends. I thought it did that already. Now, I don't know if they changed it. Isn't that what it used to do? Because they kind of changed these items a little bit because of like their lifelines and whatever and blah, blah, blah. And then all across the board is getting decreased stats. So I'm assuming that it's like buffed and compensated in some way. Because like I didn't see this item as being broken if I was thinking about Radiant items. So I'm not sure how this kind of plays out, but that's what it is now, so we'll see how it plays out on the real patch. Next, we have Radiant Guinsoo. Less attack speed starting and less AS per second, similar in line with the Guinsoo nerfs that we saw before. Radiant IE is getting a little bit less AD, and then Radiant Shojin is similarly to the regular Shojin, getting decreased on the base stats, the AD and the AP. I think that's fine because you usually take it for casting anyways, so I don't really care about the base stats when I'm thinking about Shojin on a unit. Next, we have Artifacts. This one's a big one that I think a lot of us were waiting for. So the big 3 for Artifacts that have been absolutely obnoxious is Flickerblade, Manazane, Silvermere, and I see Flickerblade, Manazane, Silvermere with a lot of red, which is good. Flickerblade's AS per attack is going from 7 to 6. I'm not sure if this makes the item bad anymore. I still think this item's going to be broken because that does not seem like I think fundamentally Flicker Blades with its stacking and ramping effects is just really, really stupid and broken. So we'll see how it plays out. But it is getting nerfed, which is a good thing. So hopefully it's nerfed enough where it's not obnoxiously broken. Next we have Mana Zane. So Mana Zane before basically would give you a huge amount of mana after you do your first cast. What that would do is it would just like give it to you and you would just chain cast instantly. So you can imagine Karma would just go bang, bang, bang and just like shove all of her fucking mana at once and just like spin like 100 discs like it's a fucking pizzeria. Now what it does is it doesn't grant it all after the cast. Instead, it basically pauses and then it will start it when it's not mana locked. So there's like, I think this is a net nerf because I think it's just going to increase the time between the cast timings. I'm not sure exactly how it will play out. It could be like a net zero change, but I'm assuming it's a nerf from what I read. Like I said, we'll have to try it out and we'll see once we try it out because some of these are confusing. It's not like a number change. Next we have Seeker's Arm Guard. So now the ability power is going from 30 to 40. That's pretty massive because sometimes you can use Seekers as like a pseudo Archangels or like an in place of Archangels kind of item. This might make it a little bit more reliable in those regards. I think it's really good on certain units that scale well. I think like Viego, for example, or some of the melee APs can really make use of it now. So that's a buff, makes it a little bit better. It was one of the weaker artifacts, however. Silver Dawn. This one's big. No longer converts damage taken into mana. It should have never done that in the first place, in my opinion. It was just stupid, and it made the item absolutely fucking broken. So this is a huge nerf. It doesn't sound like a big nerf if you don't understand what was going on, but basically, when you put Silver Dawn on certain units, like, for example, Jace. Jace didn't generate mana from getting hit. So you'd put Silver Dawn on him, you'd put some tank fucking item on him, and then he would be unkillable, and then with Silver Dawn, he would generate mana, so the more times you hit him, the more damage he absorbed, and then the more casts he would get off. He was impossible to kill, because he would just cast and heal, and no matter how much damage you pumped into the fucker, he would just keep fucking casting, because you generated mana because Silver Dawn gave him mana. So thank God they got rid of that shit because it shouldn't have existed in the first place. Because a big part of what they did when they were balancing the game is they decided to change the roles so that only certain units would get mana generation on hit to avoid that exact situation. So in the past you would have like 1v9 melee carries, and at the start of the set they were like, we don't want to have 1v9 melee carries, so we're removing generation of mana from getting hit. And it was like, okay, that makes sense, thumbs up. But you know what? We'll just put it on Silver Dawn so that it still exists in the game, but you just have to high roll the Ornn artifact. It made no fucking sense. So thank God they got rid of this, because at least now it makes sense with what they wanted for the game in the first place. So of course, it's fine. That's great. However, they are upping the Silver Dawn resist. Now I think that Silver Dawn, Jace, and that type of line will still be strong. I don't think that it's going to be gone. I don't think it's enough of a nerf because the item is still fundamentally broken because it just gives so much insane AD and the stunning immunity and all of that shit. So like, I still think the item's gonna be broken. I still think people are gonna, I don't think Silver Dawn's gonna be instantly unclickable bad item. I think you might have to change your build a little bit, right? Maybe put like a mana gen on your Jace, but this is a good start, right? At least we avoided this situation, so there's a little bit more playability around it, because that was obnoxious. That shit averaged better than some 3-star 4 costs. But anyways, power-ups! We have a lot of power-ups to go through, so we're going to start by going through them. Yippee! Adaptive Skin, Total Resist, getting buffed. Artistic KO, that's the Jin one, getting nerfed. Best Defense, Shield Damage, it's getting buffed. Bludgeoner, this is the one that ignores armor. It's going to ignore more armor. That's a buff. Caretaker Shield, this is the one where when you're doing stuff like you shield extra units based on AP, that's getting buffed. Yay. Colossal, this one's a big one. This is the one that's like obnoxious with Ashe. You play Colossal Udyr. It's an insane line. It's frustrating. It's basically defining the current landscape of the meta because you basically have to play a comp where you can actually kill the Udyr. If your comp isn't capable of doing enough damage to kill the Udyr in a timely manner, then you just lose the game anyways. Every stall comp basically loses to it. It's miserable. It sucks. They're nerfing Colossal, thank God. It doesn't seem like that big of a nerf, but apparently on the scrims, like on pro scrims, the Ashe line is a lot more nerfed because of the Gwinsu changes and these changes. So it's like, you know, death by 1,000 cuts. I'm skeptical about it still. I still think, because I've been scarred by this Ashe board so many times. So, you know, we'll see. but it's a good change. And then Colossal, you're also getting less damage amp, so that's great. Essence Share, this is when you cast, like you give some of your mana to others, getting buffed. Efficient, this is where you reduce your max mana by a certain amount, getting nerfed. Really popular, really common, really strong. Fairy Tail, this is the one where you summon a bunch of fairies that do extra damage that scales per stage. The scaling on the stage is getting increased. Fairy Tail is also no longer going to be on Samira. Good, it made no sense. I don't know why I was on her in the first place. Fan Service, this is the Xayah and Rakan one, is now getting buffed from 15 to 20. Additionally, it says Fan Service will be offered if the player already has Fan Service. I do not know what this means exactly. If it means that if you have fan service on Xayah, you'll always get fan service on Rakan and vice versa, that is a massive buff because it allows you to very easily play around the comp. Before, if you tried to play fan service Xayah, you really didn't want to play it unless you hit fan service on the Rakan, because Rakan has a lot of other fruits that made it really hard for him to find the fan service. So with the increased weighting and the also, like, if you already have it, you get it offered all the time. That might make it now that you can actually play around the comp. With the Xayah buffs and the other buffs to some of the enabling augments, like the Star Guardian ones and all of that, this might actually be something that is a playable comp as a reroll that you can play around. Xayah Rakan reroll. Next, Hat Trick. Base AD AP getting nerfed. I don't know why. I thought this was ass, but sure. Maybe it's a little bit stronger than I thought. Kahuna Huna. Now it fires a missile on attack, so it's less likely to fire to a dead target. So that's just important. So it might make it a little bit more consistent. Ice Bender, this is the Rise specific one, getting buffed. Mech Pilot, mech specific one, getting buffed. Max Arcana, base AP, so it's giving you more base AP at the start. Max Speed, base AS is giving you more base AS at the start. These are the ones that scale infinitely based on takedowns. The AS per stack for Max Speed is also getting buffed. This one didn't exist last time because of the bugs we talked about earlier in the video, so just keep that in mind that, you know, if you haven't seen it, that's why we explained it before. Max Vitality is now giving you more HP. This is the one that you get HP over time if your unit lasts very long in the fight. And it's also getting buffed per 10 seconds alive from 10 to 12. I felt like this was a little bit weak, but it always felt like a sunk cost because at one point you would just not be able to remove it. So now it's just getting better. Needlework, this is the Gwen specific one, getting a damage nerf. It was very strong. It was one of her best fruits. Not done yet. Getting a nerf. Makes sense. It was pretty strong. Ordinary, this is the one where you play a unit that has no shared synergies. It's getting a buff. I felt like it's a little bit situational, but it's getting a buff to health and attack speed. Over 9,000, this is a big nerf. Mana regen is less common. Part of the reason why over 9,000 was really broken on most reroll comps is because it can give you mana regen. It was massive. That was a big thing. So now it's less common. How much less common is it? I don't know. But we're going to have to see, because that could mean a big thing that over 9,000 is just not good to take anymore. I don't know for sure. But before, it was like a really massive enabler. It was really important. And the mana gen was like the biggest part of it. So this is a huge nerf for that. Additionally, over 9,000 no longer works on PvE rounds. So you're getting a little bit fewer stacks. So be aware of that. Precision. This one was really weird. Precision was really... It's like... How do I phrase it? It's like very broken, kind of. But it's getting its bonus mana per attack getting cut from 10 to 5. I think originally it was also going to get like some base stats because it also gives you like a lot of AD and stuff. Basically this one's like converts AS into attack damage and then you get extra mana because it locks your attack speed. The lock speed also no longer overrides Silver Murdon. I didn't even know about that, but whatever. Precision is very good on a lot of units. It's actually extremely broken. But the problem with it a lot of the times is just like it's situational. Because a lot of those builds, you really require having enough frontline and stall to make sure your precision actually gets the value that it needs. With this mana nerf, I think it's going to be a lot less common. So just keep that in mind. Pursuit AP, now from 5 to 8. Resistant flat damage reduction going from 30 to 25. Nerf. Robo Ranger stats share now is going from 35 to 50. So buff for those Mighty Mech specific ones. Then round 2, this is where it summons the dummy, I believe. Is now getting nerfed from 85 to 60, which is pretty substantial. Shadow Clone is getting decreased damage from 25 to 22. Shadow Clone's health is getting decreased from 75 to 50, so nerfs to Shadow Clone. Singularity health per death. This is the one that scales you and you do like extra damage and stuff. That's going from 8 to 10. Socialite Mark's Hex is now getting an increase to their lifetime. Before it lasted for 3 rounds. You would make like a little buffing area on your board. It's not going to last 5, which makes it a little bit easier for you to have like, you know, hexes available that you can then position around. So that's a pretty substantial increase. Socialite Health, however, is going to get decreased from 200 to 150. This is on the same line. I apologize, but Spiky Shell damage should be on a new line, but separate Fruit. But basically, the damage per stage is now getting increased from 5 to 8, so keep that in mind. Stand United shield amount getting increased from 40 to 50. Stand United MR per cast going from 10 to 25. Super Genius is the one that's really common on Yumi. The cadence is going from 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds, which means that you're gaining less AP. So it looks like a number increase. It's not a buff. It means it's going to have a larger cooldown on when you get the extra AP. So 1.5 to 2, nerf. Super Genius is no longer offered on stage 2. I don't know if that's a buff or a nerf, so I just left it in white. Unstoppable, massive nerf, half the HP. Will it still be strong? Yes, because you stun the board constantly. So you really want to make sure your unit has good tank items to make use of Unstoppable now. But 300 to 150, pretty big reduction in HP that it gives. And then weights, durability going from 18 to 12. Finally, this is the last little part. We have some other changes. So these are considered to be by the Riot Games company, small changes. So I didn't want to make it in like the whole slideshow. For all intents and purposes, that's like the crux of what you need to know. Now we're just going to go through some small changes and the bug fixes. But basically, for a lot of the prismatic augments, they want to make it a little bit easier to hit. So for Mighty Mech now, when you get offered a Mighty Mech augment, basically the way to hit Mighty Mech prismatic was you need I'll be the legs, I'll be the arms, and I'll be the head. Now you will only get offered these if you can get the rest of them. So if it's a gold, 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 or gold, gold prismatic type of lobby. So something that's important, this gives a lot of information. If you are scouting and you see somebody take I'll be the legs, you now know that you will either be in a gold, gold, gold augment lobby or a gold, gold, gold prismatic lobby. That's just some extra information for you that you can use to optimize your gameplay. However, this is a net change that's good. It just makes it so that if you commit to I'll be the legs and I'll be the arms, it's not like you can't roll the right one last. It's going to give you like a silver, and then you're like, oh, damn it, I didn't hit the thing. But basically, the way this works, you have to hit all of these and make it to level 10. Really big stretch goal. That's the point of the prismatics. They wanted to make them very uncommon and very high roll. That's like once in a lifetime type of thing. So that's just something to make note of. But in general, a lot of the prismatics were hard to reach. Star Guardian, they're making the mana threshold a little bit lower. Battle Academia, they're making the threshold a little bit lower as well. So maybe we can see them more often because they were basically like, for most people, unachievable unless it was like a crazy, crazy, crazy game. And then also, just rephrase the tooltip a little bit. Now, these are considered to be small changes, but basically Ari 3-star is getting a small buff. I think it's pretty good, but it is a small amount. Viego, however, is getting a buff. I didn't know if I should put this as a small change. They say it's small, but to me this seems pretty big because every single one of his attacks is getting buffed a little bit. This might make Viego a little bit more reliable, especially as a reroll line. Next, we have some 4-cost changes. These are mostly to 3 stars, so don't worry about all of these. This is 3-star, 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 3-star. This is like in those weird games just to make sure that you actually convert to a win. Remember what I was saying before that like, you know, Jace with Silver Mirror does better than most 3-star 4-costs? That's why, because these ones all sucked, okay? So they're just buffing it so that if you hit it, you don't actually like hit it and then just lose anyways. You hit it and you win. Bug fixes. So we have Jin Bug, which we talked about before. Darius, no longer offered Killer Instinct. Support item removed from Double Up. Crystal Rose 7 and 10 now work in Talker's Trials. Crew First bonus now gives correct shop odds for Ziggs. I didn't know what this did, but sure, I guess. I didn't know it was wrong, but my bad. Fixed tooltip errors in Juggernaut and Bastion Crowns. Crystal Gamut no longer auto cash outs on subsequent double downs after failing the first double down. I didn't know this happened, but whatever. Mighty Mech can no longer sometimes spawn on opposite side. Robo Chef fixed a bug where Mighty Mech's items counted towards the cooking pot augment. I didn't know what this was. Hard Bargain now correctly banned in Double Up. Callista's Overkill no longer incorrectly amplified during overtime. I thought this bug was fixed, but I guess some part of it still persisted because I didn't really see it. Kaisal no longer fails to cast with Mage Power, so if this happened to you, I'm sorry. Augment Power is no longer offered in earlier Augments encounter. Oh yeah, that sounds kind of broken. Reroll Transfer will now only appear on the first Augment round, makes sense. Fixed an issue where the audio for emote 234 is missing from Kuro and Shiro. Okay, sure. Final form now properly removes itself. Money Mix Prismatics no longer occasionally fails to activate the first turn the player combat completes the quest. Rising Chaos applies its reduced efficiency to magic resist reduction. I don't know what this means, but sure. Stormbenders can no longer critically strike. This is a big one. I didn't know this was a bug, but you might have seen a lot of people starting to take Stormbender. It was very good if you had crit, because the Stormbender damage could crit. If your unit had crit already. Now they just removed that, so it just doesn't work. So that's going to make Stormbender a lot worse. And I don't think it's going to be as common of an option if you were on the bandwagon of taking it, like staying up to date with like what people are saying is strong. Best defense damage can no longer critically strike. Oh, that's also pretty bad. But Shadow Clone's item damage now correctly reduced. I don't know what this is. I thought the damage was reduced. This might be like some seeping in the cracks of certain items still allowing you to do damage. I don't know. Pack Tactics no longer applies on hit effects. There's 2 other bugs that I know of that aren't here that I'll tell you about because they help you in your game. Scoreboard Scrapper, I don't know if they fixed it yet, but last time on the current patch, I don't know if it's going to be fixed here because it doesn't say it's bug fixed, but Scoreboard Scrapper, that's the one where you lose a bunch and you get the stats. If you don't bench your units, they don't gain the stats. So if you leave your units in and you Scoreboard Scrapper, the next turn, they all get reset their stats. Now, the stats don't actually get reset if you bench them and put them back on the board, like you toggle them in and out. They'll regain the stats that you were getting anyways with the Scoreboard Scrapper. So there's no lost stats, right? You don't lose any stats, but every single turn you have to bench and put your units back on the board. You have to take them off the board and put them back on. That's a pretty massive bug because obviously if you don't know about it, you're just like, you're playing down an entire augment from lose streak, which is really bad. And then if you know about it, it's a fucking pain in the ass because every single round you have to put all your units on your bench and put them back on. Now, I don't know if they fixed it or not. Maybe they fixed it. I'm just telling you guys about it because I think that one's pretty important. Like I said, it's not actually bugged where it's like you don't get the stats, but it's bugged that you have to do that procedure along the way. Also, they were talking about buffing Radiant Adaptive Helm. I'm pretty sure it only gives half the stats. Like the whole point of Radiant Adaptive is that it gives you both the top, the front, and the back line ones when you put on the unit. I don't know, but I heard that one doesn't work, so I don't know. I'm still reluctant to take that item as well. Anyways, thanks for watching. We went through all the patch notes, a little bit of a longer one. Hopefully it was entertaining. Hopefully it was fun. Have a great day. We'll do our best comps tomorrow. There's a lot of things I'm kind of unsure about. I really want to have some practical experience to be able to figure out what's strong and what's not. So we'll see how it works out tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. See ya. Bye-bye.